Hi, this is Maury Moreland Morrison, here to tell you Geico has more than just great savings. Much more. Yes, while Geico could help you rack up more moolah faster than you can say metamorphosis, they've also been the fastest growing auto insurer for more than 10 years. That's more like it. Furthermore, Geico has fast and friendly claim service. That might seem like an oxymoron, but it's not. All the more reason to say no other auto insurer has more than Geico. Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of King Jordan Radio for Wednesday, January 4, Season 5, Episode 16. Tonight on the program, we have topics that include Bill Cosby, Michael Slager, we'll get into, the Jackson Kids, and much more. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored and privileged once again to be joined with a Los Angeles attorney who is most noted for his acquittal on the Michael Jackson case back in 2005 with a 14-0 acquittal. He's also done plenty of free clinic work in his Mesereau free clinic work. You see him on NBC, CNN. He's one of the big guests here. Ladies and gentlemen, with great pleasure, I bring back to the program Tom Mesereau. Good evening, Tom. How are you?
Hi, Jordan. I'm doing well. Thank you for your kind invitation. It's wonderful to be back on your show.
Absolutely. How was your New Year?
It was fine, just very quiet. Hard to believe it's 2017, but here we are, right?
Right. Unreal. Unreal. Okay, I want to bring you up to speed with Bill Cosby. Here is a clip. The defense team is looking for a change in venue, and then I want to get your legal view on that after you hear this clip.
In the latest Bill Cosby news, his lawyers want the trial moved out of suburban Philadelphia. His team is arguing that there has been widespread negative press coverage for his sexual assault case. They said Cosby has been the target of an inflammatory and prejudicial smear campaign, and that news outlets have labeled him as a monster and sociopath. Lawyers filed a motion and asked that the trial be moved out of Montgomery County or bring in an outside jury. This Friday marks the one-year anniversary since Cosby was charged with aggravated sexual assault. His felony trial is slated for June of 2017.
Okay, Tom, and you being around and knowing all this stuff, why do you think the defense team is looking to move this trial? Everybody knows Bill Cosby, I'm sure of that. What do you think some of the strategy behind this is?
Well, I'm not part of the defense team, so I don't have access to the information they have. I have to assume they hired a jury consultant to do some studies, focus groups, phone surveys, studies of attitudes in that community. And, I have to also assume that they are concerned with the fact that the current district attorney who's prosecuting Bill Cosby ran on a platform that if elected, he would go after Bill Cosby. So if you do some analysis of the kind of coverage that there's been on the news stations, on talk shows, et cetera, in the print media, on the internet, and you take into account that, this political campaign run by the DA was focused around going after Bill Cosby, they may have a very valid point that this community in particular is far more prejudiced than any other community could possibly be. Yes, it's going to be argued by the prosecution, who probably don't want to change a venue, that everyone's heard of the case, everyone has access to these media sources. But I suspect if you look at the local news reporting, print, TV, internet, social media, you'll find that it's pretty prejudiced against him. So I suspect the defense has a valid point. It's interesting because it brings back all memories of the Michael Jackson case when we were trying it in Santa Maria, which is northern Santa Barbara County, and everybody was thinking we're going to want to change a venue. And I had never tried a case in Santa Barbara County before. It's north of Los Angeles County where I live and practice. And I spent a lot of time up there alone talking to people to try and get a feel for just what the attitudes about Michael Jackson were. And I also found out that that part of Santa Barbara County had on a number of occasions tried to secede from South Santa Barbara County, where Tom Sneddon, the DA, had his main office. So, you know, I had a jury consultant who I largely didn't listen to. I followed my own instincts, and my instincts were that this community was very independent-minded, very libertarian in spirit. I think their attitude was, we follow the law, but government don't go too much into our private lives. We're good people. We don't want you interfering with everything we do. And I also realized that Michael Jackson hired people at Neverland. He had about 100 employees. And that the general feeling about him during the few times anyone saw him was rather favorable. So I decided that I would do well just staying put. And I remember reporter Diane Dimon, who was, you know, our greatest enemy in the media at that point. She got on TV and she pointed out there was a procedure whereby if I stayed in Santa Maria, I could ask for some jurors to be shipped from Santa Barbara, the city of Santa Barbara in South County, where Steddon's office was. And South County was thought to be much more liberal. You had the University of California at Santa Barbara. You had the wealthy patrons of the arts, a lot of entertainment people. And she was criticizing me, actually, for, in her, I forget what word she used, but being foolish enough not to take advantage of that procedure and bring some so-called liberal jurors from South County up north. And what she didn't know was that there was a lot of pride among people in northern Santa Barbara County, and I felt that if I asked to bring some jurors up from South County, that would be perceived as somewhat of an insult or a lack of confidence in the community. So I stayed put despite lots of criticism, and fortunately it worked. But I have to assume Bill Cosby's lawyers know what they're doing and are quite concerned that the coverage has been so prejudicial that they just can't get an independent and fair-minded jury.
And another argument that's been going on is the alleged so-called other accusers. They're talking about 10, there's rumors 10 to 13. What goes into a unbiased judge of how you let that type of evidence in from a judge's unbiased standpoint?
Well, again, I don't practice in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has its own rules. I actually consulted a lawyer who went to law school in Pennsylvania and college, and has a lot of friends who practice there, and she told me that there's a very good chance this judge might let all 13 alleged victims, alleged accusers, testify. That the laws in Pennsylvania are very pro-prosecution when it comes to this type of evidence. You may recall in the Michael Jackson case, the prosecution wanted to bring in a number of so-called similar act, accusers, and the judge allowed them to bring in evidence that 5 other young men had been molested by Michael Jackson. So that kind of evidence tends to be very, very detrimental to the defense because you're not being charged for allegedly, raping or molesting or assaulting, these other people. But nevertheless, if you parade a bunch in, a jury may actually confuse what the underlying charges are with what they think went on in similar situations. So it tends to be very devastating evidence for the defense and very strong evidence for the prosecution when this kind of stuff is let in.
Yeah, no question about it, and we'll see what happens from here, and should be an interesting trial. Also, in the last few days, the Kennedy cousin, Michael Slager, the court ruled that he might have to go back to prison. Here's a clip, and then I want to get your take on the other side of this.
Breaking news tonight, the Connecticut Supreme Court reinstating Kennedy cousin Michael Skakel's murder conviction. A divided state Supreme Court ruling 4-3 just this afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ann Craig. Darren Kramer is off tonight. All of this revolves around the death of Martha Moxley, who was just 15 when she was killed back in 1975. Well, Skakel was convicted back in 2002 of killing Moxley back in Greenwich more than 2 decades earlier when they were both teenagers. He was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison, but was freed in 2013 when a judge granted a new trial. Prosecutors appealed that decision for a new trial, and now the Connecticut Supreme Court has ruled to reinstate that murder conviction. News 8's Bob Wilson live tonight in Hartford with what we're learning. Bob.
Yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. We talked about it with Mickey Sherman, the attorney at the time that had the mistrial kind of on him. He said, they said he didn't present all the evidence he should have. He didn't give alibis he should have. Well, I talked to him tonight about it, and he says, you know what? A little different story from him. He's not concerned about being exonerated. He's more concerned about what happens to Michael Skakel next.
I'm happy for myself for being exonerated. That's really irrelevant. The issue is whether or not Michael Skakel should have been sentenced to jail, whether or not he should have been tried as an adult, whether or not the jury should have convicted him. So for those situations, I'm not again clicking my heels.
Asked Mickey Sherman what thinks should happen next, what's going to happen to Michael Skakel. He says, you know what? He right now is still reeling from this decision. He says he's not sure what's going to happen next. He's just taking this in right now and going to try to figure out what is next for him. I'm Bob Wilson reporting live at the U.S. Supreme Court, News 8.
Tom, what goes into making these high-profile decisions, in your opinion, with this case in mind?
Well, you have to understand that criminal defense is a rough and tumble business, and
right.
When you win, everyone thinks you're a genius, and when you lose, everybody starts attacking you. And
right.
It's very common for a convicted defendant to raise claims of inadequacy of counsel, and they're almost raised in virtually every time someone appeals a conviction. There are new lawyers. Usually, you have a new lawyer for appeal. Are always looking for some argument to make that the defense was inadequate at the trial level. I don't do post-conviction work. I just try cases, and I always tell clients or potential clients that if something goes wrong, you don't want me doing the appeal, because if the same lawyer who tried the case handles the appeal, you usually are not allowed to raise inadequacy of counsel, and that makes a little sense because. How can the lawyer be making an argument that he didn't do a good job on appeal? But if a new lawyer is hired, it's much easier to make that argument. Now, most claims of inadequacy of counsel are denied because the standards are not that you have to be the best lawyer on the planet. You have to do an adequate job. And, I remember speaking to Mickey Sherman a few times through the years. I don't really know him very well, but he had a very good reputation in Connecticut.
Yes.
A very good reputation in the legal community. My understanding is that the Kennedys picked him because he was thought to be the best lawyer in that state. He's been through a rough ride with a judge saying that his representation was inadequate. He's been exonerated now, but I admire his response. Said, look, the most important thing is the client, not me. That's a real professional response. So I admire the way he's handling this issue.
Oh, instead of not just sitting still, he's still, taking his client's side, in essence.
Yeah, I mean, he could have said, I'm just so happy I've been exonerated and left it alone, and that would have been a very self-serving response. But what he's doing is taking the professional route and saying that, the most important person is not me, it's the client. Even if the client attacked me, even if the client doesn't like me, even if the client hates me, I'm concerned about the client's interests before my own. And I think that's a very professional attitude to take in a situation like this.
Absolutely. Okay, on the Michael Jackson kids, first of all, Prince has been doing some great things. He was at an L.A. Boys and Girls Club, and he spoke to Extra, and I want you to hear and get your take on the other side.
While he was alive, you remember Michael Jackson hid his children from public view, going so far as to have them wear masks. Well, Prince, who is now 19 and a college student, spoke with Alex Hutchins at an event for Heal Los Angeles, a student organization he co-founded that honors Michael's philanthropic legacy, and it helps children in need.
Your dad was a very philanthropic man. How you growing up as a kid has shaped who you are now to be doing something like this?
Basically, when we were growing up, my dad would always talk about how he would always show us what he was doing to help the kids and to help the world.
Following in his father's footsteps, Prince started his own charity at Loyola Marymount University, where he's currently a sophomore. You're behind the scenes a lot. It seems like you're not doing this for attention.
I don't really like to do this for attention. I was telling a couple of my friends that when I was coming over here, I don't know how to act because I rather just do it, not for anything, not for the thanks or the gratitude, just because I enjoy doing it. But it is hard finding a balance in between because I can use the name to bring attention to it and the family's name and everything, but I also just like to do it just because.
With the Jackson name and a wisdom well beyond his 19 years, Prince turned the Boys and Girls Club into a winter wonderland. Santa was there, as were Mickey and Minnie dressed in their Christmas best. Children wrote a wish list for what they wanted, and one letter especially touched Prince.
So he says, I know you are asking me what I would like for Christmas, but I would like to ask for something for someone else. My mom. She's had the same bed mattress for about 8 years now. And I would just like to ask for a new bed for her. She cleans houses for a living, and she's always out during the day from 6 to 7 p.m. She always comes home in pain and still manages to take care of me and my 2 sisters. So all I want this Christmas is a bed for my mom.
And a bed she got. The event reminded Prince of one of his favorite Christmas memories with his dad at a children's hospital.
I don't know if he bought out a toy store, but it was a lot of toys. And he brought in like basically 2 sleighs filled with toys.
Sleighs?
Yeah, like actual sleighs.
Cool.
And when he walked in, all of the kids, the whole room lit up and everybody was happy. There was music. He was taking pictures, telling jokes with the kids, and we were there for a long time.
Okay, Tom, well, you hear that and you hear Prince. What do you make of Prince Jackson taking in the footsteps of his dad, Michael Jackson?
Well, I think it's just wonderful. You know, Michael was one of the most generous, kind-hearted, giving people I've ever encountered in my lifetime. As I'm sure many people listening remember, he had a rule that when he went on a foreign tour that he would visit a children's hospital wherever he performed. And he very silently and quietly, you know, paid bills for kids who were disabled and, you know, couldn't pay their doctor's bills, couldn't pay their hospital bills. He went around the world doing that kind of thing, not publicizing it. And he was a great humanitarian and a very, very kind-hearted person. And it's wonderful to see that his son, who is a very impressive young man based on everything I see and hear, is trying to follow in his footsteps. We live in a time where people are becoming increasingly selfish, in my opinion. You know, the cost of living, the cost of education, what you see on the internet, you know, your ability to get information so quickly about what other people are doing with their lives. I think the end result is society is getting increasingly selfish, and we need good people to, you know, extend themselves to those less fortunate and help those who don't have the resources or the talents or the opportunities or the luck that many of us have had. And I'm very impressed with what you just played about Prince and very happy that he's following in his dad's footsteps, who was a really wonderful guy.
And you had the opportunity, granted at a younger age, to meet Prince. What was your take when you met Prince?
You know, I knew Michael during the lowest point of his life. It was a nightmare for him. He lived in fear of spending the rest of his life in prison. He was forced to sit in a courtroom 5 days a week and hear prosecutors say that he organized a conspiracy to abduct children, falsely imprison a family, that he would give a cancer-stricken child alcohol to set the child up to be molested. I mean, he had to sit there 5 days a week for almost 5 months listening to these horrible, horrible accusations and wondering if he'd ever be free when the jury came back with a verdict, if they did. So I knew him during an awful time, and I think he was trying to shield his children from what was going on as much as possible. But when I would go to Neverland, these three children just adored their father. They were just hanging all over him. And there were a couple of times I could tell, that they sensed something was wrong. Something was very, very troubling. And I could see a worried look in their eye when they would hug him and follow him into his room. And they were children. They were, they could sense something was off. But I remember verdict day, after we got a not guilty on all 14, charges, 10 felonies, 4 misdemeanors. I went to Neverland. I skipped the press conference I could have attended, and I went to Neverland to see how Michael was. And his children, when they realized who I was and their father told them what I had done, they all came running, and I hugged all 3 of them, and it was just a joyous, wonderful day. But remember, Michael was trying to shield them as much as possible from the horrible ordeal that I was defending him in.
And you skipping the press conference is in such a high-profile case like that. Most attorneys in that spot probably wouldn't do that, right?
I think you're probably correct. I think most attorneys who won the biggest case of their lifetime probably would have not missed that press conference or anything, because it was an opportunity to appear all over the world. Remember, the trial was not there was not a camera in the courtroom. The trial was not televised. So probably you're right. I think most attorneys in my spot would have thought this is a chance to promote myself throughout the entire globe. I just didn't take that approach. I felt that I should be with Michael and his family at Neverland, and that's where I went.
No question. Okay, lately the media has been, they've been talking about Paris Jackson and her outings with her boyfriend. Here's some sound of that, and I want to get your take on the other side.
Merry Christmas from DMZ! Go ahead, open it! All right, just what you wanted! Paris Jackson half naked in Maui! It's all right, she's 18.
Michael Jackson's daughter, Paris, is down in Maui with her boyfriend, Michael Snooty.
And someone's spending Christmas in Paris. Jeez, get a room! With an unobstructed view of the ocean. Nice.
She is getting really hot and heavy, making out with her boyfriend in the water. They look happy. They look cute. They look good.
Yeah, she does. Good enough to drink.
Is this an advertisement? It's weird that she has on a weird swag bag, Corona, beer, bathing suit.
It's like she won the bikini at, the bar contest that day.
Actually, Paris has been sporting Corona's signature crown for a while. It's like she's sponsored by Corona, which she can't drink for 3 more years.
I thought you would like that. I do like it now. I'm into it as well. The bleach blonde hair, the hint of boob with that bikini. It's like something's ripped open the bikini.
2 things, actually. Anyway, enjoy Maui, Michael and Paris. Your love is as beautiful and perfect as the cover-up job on Michael's Confederate flag tattoo. Merry Christmas!
Okay, Tom, what is your take of TMZ and other outlets doing what they do, saying what they say in that media-type form of Paris Jackson?
Well, I don't, follow tabloid reporting very much, and this sounds, like tabloid reporting to me. What you just played to me and what you heard on the radio, I didn't watch on a TV screen, but it sounds like pure tabloid reporting. It'd be easy to say I don't take it too seriously, but I do worry about the effect on young people. Michael tried as much as he could to shield his kids from the fishbowl in which, they were being raised, because, the media was always jumping all over Michael Jackson, any movie made. And he was trying to shield them from that so they could develop in as normal a way as possible. He had them wear masks because he was worried about kidnapping and crime and things of that sort. I don't blame him at all for that, even though he was criticized, for whatever he did. But to have young kids growing up in a fishbowl to that extent, with the media jumping over every single move you make, is a little disturbing to me. when I heard what you just broadcast, it sounded, like sort of lighthearted reporting on the surface. But I just hope, these children can withstand a lot of that ridiculous, coverage that is only meant to exploit them. It's not meant to help them at all. It's meant to exploit them for profit. And I just hope it doesn't go too far, and I hope they have, proper guidance when it comes to dealing with it, because it can really, in my opinion, mess up a young person's development. Fame is a double-edged sword. It's something so many people want, but it can be so dangerous and so disturbing if someone doesn't know how to handle it. And I'm hoping these brilliant kids, they're, handsome, beautiful, brilliant kids. I mean, I just hope they can handle this stuff well enough.
Yeah, Michael, like they said, didn't want to shield them from that. And when you actually see what they show, it's they make light of it, but it is a rough spot for Powers to be in. I don't think she's doing it on purpose, but there's cameras all over, and it's tough, as you said. So
it really is.
We'll see what happens.
It's an unusual way. It's an unusual way to develop, an unusual way to grow, and the camera can have good and bad effects on all of us. And I just hope they can handle it properly, and they have the guidance and the support to handle it properly.
No question. Okay, this last story I wanted to get your take on is with Michael Slager. Here's the sound, and we'll talk.
We begin with the headline breaking this afternoon in that South Carolina courtroom in the case of former police officer Michael Slager. The mistrial now declared after the shooting death of Walter Scott, an unarmed black man who was running from the officer. That video that sent shockwaves, Scott running off after being stopped for a broken taillight, Slager chasing after him and then firing 8 times at his back. ABC's Steve Osensami is in Charleston.
The court, therefore, must declare a mistrial in this case.
This former police officer, seen in this disturbing cell phone video shooting a black man in the back as he was running away, will go home tonight to the loving arms of his family. The mistrial means he will remain out on bond, but under house arrest.
Until my family can see justice, no, there's no forgiveness.
For the family of Walter Scott and for black Americans who thought that video of the killing would bring justice, they feel the system has failed them again. They're already looking forward to a retrial promised tonight by prosecutors.
It's not over. Y'all hear me? It's not over. So God's sake, it's over.
At least 2 of the jurors, both of them white women, were in tears as the black foreman delivered the news.
The statistics say that the next jury, look a lot like you.
Most of the nearly all-white jury looked like they were in disbelief, but there was one who refused to make eye contact with the judge, the lawyers, or the family of Walter Scott.
Something got to him. I'm sure we'll quickly hear from the rest of the jurors who disagree with him.
A handful of people who came to watch stormed out of the courtroom in disgust. To so many, the crime was clear. Slager fired 8 shots, and when he fired his first bullet, Scott was already 18 feet away. On the witness stand, he explained that he and Scott fought before they were seen in the recording. He says at one point, Scott got a hold of his taser and says in his mind at the time, Scott was a threat.
I fired until the threat was stopped, like I'm trying to do.
Jurors could have picked between manslaughter and murder and couldn't agree on either.
And Steve joins us live tonight. Steve, what kind of timeline are we looking at for a new trial here?
Well, David, Slager first has a federal trial across the street that's scheduled next year. Prosecutors in this case say they plan to work with the federal court, but they absolutely plan to retry this case. As far as protests, there weren't violent protests here when Walter Scott was killed, and Scott's family tonight is begging the streets for that same patience. David.
Okay, Tom, this case, from when you look at it from the outside with the camera video, looks like a clear-cut decision of guilt, in my opinion. What was your opinion when you heard the news that this was a mistrial?
I was very surprised. However, it's not easy to convict police officers.
Right.
To many members of American society, police officers are the ones who protect our families, keep us safe, the ones we call when we're in trouble. And there are certain individuals in American society that, have trouble finding any police officer guilty, no matter what the evidence looks like. I'm with you. I mean, that tape is one of the most ugly, horrid tapes I've ever seen. And it looks like a cold-blooded execution to me. It looks to me, the last time I saw it, which was on the news, that they're chatting and the African-American gentleman starts to run away and the cop just takes out a gun and coldly executes him. He doesn't look like any threat at all. My understanding was the African-American man, the victim, was pulled over for an alleged traffic violation. So how does that escalate into this kind of a thing? I was very surprised with the caveat that it's not always easy to get 12 people who want to convict a police officer. I think he will eventually be convicted, and I think he murdered the person he shot.
Yeah, as you know, retrials sometimes don't do well for the defense, right? Like the Menendez brothers, I think you pointed out.
Actually, my experience in the justice system is quite the opposite. That retrials often benefit the prosecution. That they get it.
Right.
The defense often holds back and doesn't let the prosecution know exactly what their argument's going to be. And I generally believe the prosecutors benefit from it. Not always, but most of the time, I think. So this sounds like it was one rogue juror who just refused to convict a police officer. That's what it sounds like. But again, I haven't been in the courtroom, so I didn't see everything.
Yeah, that was. It seemed like there was one person that with the holdout, and they are revisiting the Menendez brothers case this week because of the anniversary or whatnot, and that a lot of people don't know because it's so long ago that originally was a mistrial, right? In the first case of that, you explained to me.
The first trial ended in a mistrial for both brothers. My understanding is that nobody wanted to acquit them, but they just could not agree on what to convict them of. Some people wanted first-degree murder, some wanted second-degree, some wanted manslaughter. And there was a lot of very emotional give and take in the jury room about what to convict them of, and they just couldn't agree. So there was a second trial, a retrial, and they were convicted of murder with special circumstances, but they did not get the death penalty.
But in the second trial, it was more favorable for the prosecutors, right?
Well, the judge, reversed a lot of his rulings that had helped the defense in the first trial, which I thought was quite unfair. And to be honest with you, when you ask me questions about these cases, the memories from the past come back. I remember when the prosecution rested their case in the Michael Jackson trial, and I felt that jury would not convict Michael if I rested and didn't put on a case. However, I was not confident it would be not guilty every count. I thought there would be at least some hung counts, which would enable the prosecution to try him again. And I feared that the trial judge would do what the trial judge in the Menendez case did. I was afraid that some of the rulings that he gave us that I thought really helped us, like playing the outtakes from the Bashir documentary, which District Attorney Sneddon vigorously opposed. I was afraid some of these rulings would go against us the second time around, and Michael wouldn't have as fair a trial and might not survive it. So my decision, even though I felt probably 99.9% of defense lawyers in America, if they'd been in my shoes, would have probably not put on a defense.
Really?
Got a hung jury, and people would have been praising the defense attorney because no one thought he had a chance in that thing. I felt we had to take risks and put on our witnesses because every time you put on a witness, you subject that witness to cross-examination, and something unpredictable can happen. I decided it was a risk we had to take we couldn't just rest on the good cross-examination we'd done. We had to really tell our story as well. And fortunately, my decision was correct.
And you had some good cards up your sleeve for your case, like Chris Tucker and Macaulay Culkin, right?
We did. You know, again, I was criticized. You know, I began with Wade Robson, as you know, as my first witness. And
yes.
I also put on Wade Robson's mother and his sister. They were all very supportive. I put on Brett Barnes, who came all the way from Australia, lost his job. He was so angry that false accusations that he was molested were being floated through the courtroom. I put on Macaulay, who said the charges were ridiculous, that he was molested. And, you know, I put on some other witnesses about what went on at Neverland. And then I just felt that I had to really bolster my opening statement with a solid defense case. But I was criticized for doing it, for not resting when the going was good. I just feared it'd be a mistrial, it'd be a retrial, and the judge would change some of his rulings, and Michael would end up in prison for life. So I took some risks. I think good defense lawyers have to take risks. Sometimes you get burned when you do, but if you don't take risks, you're not going to, you know, win a lot of cases either. So that's the decision I made. When you mentioned the Menendez situation, I actually was thinking about the Menendez case, how that judge had reversed a lot of rulings that helped the defense in the first trial, because in my opinion, that judge wanted a conviction.
Really? Yeah, that's interesting. And, you know, when I did have Mickey Sherman
I'm talking about the judge in the Menendez.
He said judges belong on the prosecution table. He was joking, but he thinks he once did say here that a lot of judges seem to favor prosecution. Not all, but some. Would you agree?
Well, remember that you know federal judges are appointed by the president. They're confirmed by the Senate, and then if they're approved, they're judges for life. They don't run for re-election, but state judges run for re-election. So when a state judge is handling a high-profile case, you have to assume that consciously or subconsciously, they're just, you know, aware that what they do and how they're portrayed could affect their ability to be reelected. So very often it's safer politically to be perceived as pro-prosecution.
Yes, that's definitely what it seems like. And you got through that 12 years later, 13 years now, we're talking about it. Wow. Okay, I think we have a call from Indiana, Indianapolis. 317 is up. Please state your name and where you're calling from. You're live on King Jordan Radio. 317, your turn.
Hey, this is Christy. I'm calling from Greenwood, Indiana this time around.
Hi.
Hi, Mr. Mesereau.
How are you?
I'm good. I trust you're well, too.
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much.
I notice how the media tends to harass Michael's children so much, and I find it extremely atrocious. But at the same time, it doesn't surprise me in the least. I mean, seeing as how Michael can no longer be hurt, haters find it appropriate to just target his children.
Well, media is a big business, and it's all about profit. It's all about ratings. It's not about justice. It's not about fairness. It's not about compassion for children or families. It's about the big dollar. So they'll go where they think they can get a story to exploit and promote. And as I said before, I just hope under the glare of this media spotlight, Michael's children don't, make some mistakes or develop in a way that's not healthy for them. It's just hard for any young person to be in that limelight like that and come out unscathed, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree very much. Well, my question is, in regards to the notion that that Michael would be livid and rolling in his grave if at the fact that Paris had been spending time with her biological mother. What's your take on that?
Well, that's a controversial subject, and I'm not in the middle of the family dynamics when it comes to that. But I've always felt that most young people want to know who their mother is and want to have a good relationship with their mother. So I don't know what Michael would say or not say, but it's a natural thing for a child to want to, know about their mother and be close to their mother and spend time with their mother. I think, most of us are built that way. So if the children want to have a good relationship with their mother, I'm not surprised. I don't know if they do or they don't. And it's certainly not, I'm not privy to a lot of inside information, but I think Michael would want whatever was best for his children. Whatever would make them healthy and happy and focused on living a decent and productive life, I think he would favor. And, whether they're close to their mother or not, if they have a healthy relationship with her, I see nothing wrong with that myself. And I do have to tell you, I haven't had a lot of experiences with Debbie Rowe, but the one I had in the trial turned out to be quite positive because, the prosecution thought she was going to be a star witness for them and she was going to get on the stand and say Michael was a bad father and all sorts of horrible things. She got into the courtroom and she looked over at him and I could see in her eyes how much affection she had for him. And she ended up a witness for the defense, even though the prosecutors called her and they wined and dined her the night before the trial. And she got up there and she spoke the truth. So my limited experience with her was a very positive one. And I hope the children, have a positive relationship with their mother because I think most kids want that.
Definitely. And she is going through chemo, so we wish her the best. Debbie Rowe, that is.
I didn't realize that. I'm sorry to hear that, and I wish her a speedy recovery as well.
No question about it. And Tom, also one last thing. We were talking about when he first got elected. You said some very interesting things, and I'd like maybe you share with the audience. Donald Trump, you didn't come down so hard as a lot of people did. You had a good, healthy belief and optimistic belief. And 2 months later, after I talked to you, what is your take and feeling about President-elect Donald Trump?
Well, he hasn't taken over yet. He was elected according to the rules. He's going to be our president. And I'm hoping that he'll want to surprise a lot of people who don't think he has the temperament or the background for the job. I'm hoping that he gets in office. I hope he does things for poor people that are unexpected. I hope he goes into poor neighborhoods and looks at schools that need funding and assistance and does something about it. Just like he's looking at American businesses and saying, don't go overseas, hire up, people here, don't move your plants abroad. I remember he made a statement. He said, what have the Clintons done for poor black neighborhoods? Why don't you give me a chance? Well, I want to give him a chance. I'm hoping that he surprises a lot of people and focuses on, those less fortunate, focuses on American education, and focuses on jobs. And if he can do a lot in those areas, I think we might be better off. So I'm going to give him a chance. I'm an optimist. I hope he seems to be the kind of guy that accepts challenges. And he's being challenged almost every day that he's not competent, that he's bringing in the wrong people, that he can't, fulfill his promises. And I hope he takes it as a challenge and meets these challenges because I'd like to see a lot of improvement in many areas in American society. Race relations, violence in the inner cities, poor education in the inner cities. Our schools need to be focused upon in a way that no one has before. I'd like to see, people who've made mistakes in life, gone to prison, whatever, not come out and be shunned without the ability to get a job or make a living. All that does is generate more crime. And I'm hoping he surprises a lot of us. That's my hope, and that's my optimism.
And in the 2 terms of Obama, what would you say about that?
Well, he was a brilliant man, and what he did with health care, whether you like it or not, was revolutionary and thought to be impossible to do. You know, he took over the worst economic situation America had faced since 1929, the Great Depression. People forget that. I mean, we were in the worst economic mess since 1929, and he did pull us out of a lot of that, you know, where he's leaving office with our economy actually doing much better than anyone ever expected. And I think he took a very measured approach to foreign conflict. I think he didn't want to send American lives overseas if he could avoid it. Unfortunately, wars went on throughout the 8 years he was in office. But my sense was he did not want to risk American lives if he didn't have to. Tried to shift some of the burden to foreign powers to, you know, do their fair share of whatever was necessary in Afghanistan and Iraq and other hot spots. I also think his being elected was a great symbol to minority youth that you can do this, you know, because before he did what he did, you know, minority youth deep down inside didn't think they could be president. Now they know they can be. So I think he did a lot of encouragement for African American youth, Latino youth, you know, minority youth, that, you know, no matter what obstacles are in front of you, and no matter what obstacles historically have been in front of you, you can do it. You need character, you need determination, you need to learn from mistakes, you need to get yourself an education and be responsible, and you can do what I did. And I thought it was a great example that he set for young people. So there's a lot that he accomplished for sure.
Yeah, a lot of people 20 years ago said it would be impossible to see a black president emerge.
I remember he was running the first time, and a lot of black people I knew didn't think it was even possible to have a black president. They just, even when the polls showed he might be able to do it, they just didn't believe it. They thought the country was so prejudiced, and historically this country was prejudiced. I mean, a lot of people don't realize just, in the early days of America, how the laws were stacked against black people. You know, it was a capital crime, punishable by execution, to teach a black person to read. It was a misdemeanor if a white person killed a black person. It was a felony if a black person killed a white person. You know, the laws were so stacked against, the black population. You know, one of the most insidious parts of slavery was that it was designed to make sure black families didn't come together and form. There's so much in our history that kept minority people down, and to have a black man elected president was a huge, huge accomplishment in this society, and a tremendous example to young people that you can accomplish whatever you want, no matter what the history, no matter what the obstacles in front of you. So he did a lot of good, President Obama. He really did, in my opinion. But I'm hoping Donald Trump, tries to prove a lot of people wrong, and he's effective in areas that this country needs leadership in, and needs results. I mean, he talks about jobs. He talks about the inner city. I hope he does a lot, for the inner city, and a lot for education, and a lot for jobs. I think he's been attacked so much as someone who, doesn't have the ability to achieve a lot in a political situation, and I hope he proves people wrong. I'd like to see us go on to bigger and better things.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of riots, obviously, but we'll see what happens when he finally steps in. And, a lot of people were angered. A lot of high-profile people said they wouldn't even go into the hotel now, things like that. But like you said, I hope he could make America great again, like he said.
Well, it was a very divisive election, and we live in a very divisive society. But he's a,
right.
What he accomplished is just remarkable when you think of where he started. I mean, he didn't have a political organization, I believe. He didn't have any real experience in doing this. He used the media in his own unique way, and it worked. I mean, it's an astonishing story. I mean, early in the Republican primaries season, he gave himself a 10 to 20% chance in one interview. And I think he tapped into a lot of anger, and he tapped into a lot of frustration. And it's funny because when Obama was first elected, you remember what the main theme was? Hope. And I think,
yes,
believe it or not, Trump was elected in a similar way because he gave hope to a lot of angry, disenfranchised people who want something they don't have. And it's amazing how he tapped into it. It's also amazing how Hillary Clinton didn't tap into it. I was telling a friend the other day, I mean, Hillary Clinton blew it twice with very inexperienced opponents. 8 years ago with Obama, who was very inexperienced. I think he was a first-term senator. I think he'd had one term in the state legislature. He was very inexperienced, and the Clintons woke up, and he had won Iowa, and he was winning state after state, and they didn't know what hit them. They didn't see it coming. Well, they obviously didn't see Trump coming either. To me, she's been surrounded by people who kind of missed the boat both times.
Yeah, there's no question. And there was a lot of mean-spirited things said in those debates. But a lot of people say, that won't be happening. Like, he's going to hire a special prosecutor to get Hillary and things like that. A lot of things are said in jest to get yourself elected. Do you agree?
Well, Donald Trump was a tough guy to deal with in a political debate, in a political campaign, because if you ignored him, you looked weak. If you got in the mud and threw dirt at him, he's better than you at it. So he was a tough character to deal with in the world of politics, because he came in there without a political background. He said he didn't care what people think. He didn't care about political correctness, and he said a lot of things that people latched onto, and that's how he got elected, by being somewhat unmainstream, unorthodox. His rough, tough, rock'em sock'em style obviously appealed to enough people in key states to get him elected. It's a remarkable story.
Oh, no question about it. And he'll be elected. He'll be taking over soon at the White House. And like you said, I hope things work out good for him. And hope you have rest of the good 2017. Hope this is your best year, Tom, and we hope to have you back soon.
Well, thank you very much. It's always an honor and privilege to be on your show. You run a great show, and
thank you.
Thanks for being the voice of a lot of people that don't have one. And you've done a lot for the legacy of Michael Jackson, and you've done a lot for the legacy of his family, and I appreciate it, and I'm always honored to be on the show, and I wish everybody listening a happy new year and much health and
a lot
prosperity.
of people are listening.
And happy. Thank you very much,
Thank
Jordan.
you.
I appreciate it.
Okay, Tom, we'll speak to you soon.
Okay.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was the great Tom Mesereau. We'll be back right at you tomorrow with defense attorney Richard Herman. Shout out to my helper, Madeline Pager, Vicky. Thank you so much. Also, we'll be back next week. We'll get into that tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll get into the Superfly Jimmy Snuka. Next time Mesereau will be back will be probably sometime in the March area. So thank you for listening. We'll be back in 22 hours from now. Speak to you then. Good night, everybody. Thanks for listening to King Jordan Radio. Follow us on Twitter at King Jordan Radio at King Jordan RAD. Good night, everybody.
Yo, everybody get up! Everybody get up! Everybody needs to understand that I'm more than simply a hype man for this rap group, just like Geico is more than just a company that can save you money. Geico also has fast and friendly claim service, so they can help you when you need it most. And while I do love being a hype man, I also love reading for children's audiobooks. Like Little Bo Peep, she lost the sheep, and she don't know where to find them. Yo!
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
Progressive brings you Flowetry with Flo.
When Flo flows, she flows in the know. Mind ruminates the rates. Shown them all, I heed the call. Seeing the rest, I choose the best. Sometimes it's ours, sometimes it's not. When the fox walks, is it called a fox trot? That's a real question.
Compare Progressive Direct rates with competitors' rates. Visit Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.